welcome back to my channel. I'm your today's host, Christopher Kwok, and today I'll be reading along the Pride and Prejudice, chapter 13th, and we're about to start. "I hope, my dear," said Mr. Bennet to his wife, as they were at breakfast the next morning, "that you have ordered a good dinner today, because I have reason to expect an addition to our family party." "Who do you mean, my dear?" "I know of nobody that is coming, I am sure, unless Charlotte Lucas should happen to call in, and I hope my dinners are good enough for her. I don't believe she often sees such at home. The person of whom I speak is a gentleman and a stranger." Mr. Bennet's eyes sparkled. "A gentleman and a stranger? It is Mr. Bingley, I am totally sure. Why, Jane, you never dropped a word of this, you sly thing. Well, I am sure I shall be extremely glad to see Mr. Bingley. But good Lord, how unluckily! There is not a bit of a fish to be got today. Lydia, my love, ring the bell. I must speak to Hill. This moment it is not Mr. Bingley," said her husband. "It is a person who I never saw in the whole course of my life." This roused a general astonishment, and he had the pleasure of being eagerly questioned by his wife and 5 daughters at once. After amusing himself some time with their curiosity, he thus explained: "About a month ago I received this letter, and about a fortnight ago I answered it, for I thought it a case of some delicacy and requiring an early attention. It is from my cousin, Mr. Collins, who, when I am dead, may turn you all out of this house as soon as he pleased." "Oh, my dear," cried his wife, "I cannot bear to hear that mentioned. Pray don't talk of that odious man. I do think it is the hardest thing in the world that your estate should be entailed away from your own children, and I am sure, if I had been you, I should have tried long ago to do something or other about it." Jane and Elizabeth attempted to explain to her the nature of an entail. He had often attempted it before, but it was a subject on which Mrs. Bennet was beyond the reach of reason, and she continued to rail bitterly against the cruelty of settling an estate away from a family of 5 daughters, in favor of a man whom nobody cared anything about it. "It certainly is a most inquisitive affair," said Mr. Bennet, "and nothing can clear Mr. Collins from the guilt of inheriting Lombard. But if you will listen to his letter, you may perhaps be a little softened by his manner of expressing himself." "No, that I am sure I shouldn't. And I think it was a very impertinent of him to write to you at all, and very hypocritical. I hate such a false friends. Why couldn't he keep on quarreling with you, as his father didn't before him? Why, indeed, he does seem to have some filial scruples on the head, as you will hear. by Hosford near Westerham, Kent, October 15th. This that agreement subsisting between yourself and my late honored father always gave me such uneasiness, and since I have had the misfortune to lose him, I have frequently wished to heal the breach. But sometime I was kept back in my own doubt, fearing lest it might seem disrespectful to his memory for me to be on good terms with anyone with whom it had always pleased him to be at variance. There, Mr. Bennet, my mind, however, is not made up on the subject for having received ordination at Easter. I have been so fortunate as to be distinguished by the patronage of the Right Honorable Lady Catherine de Bourgh, widow of Sir Louis de Bourgh, whose bounty and beneficence has preferred me to the valuable rectory of the parish, where it shall be my earnest endeavour to demean myself with grateful respect towards her ladyship, and be very ready to perform those rites and ceremonies which are instituted by the Church of England. As a clergyman, moreover, I feel it my duty to promote and establish the blessing of peace in all families within the reach of my influence. And on those grounds, I flatter myself that my present overturns of goodwill are highly commendable, and that the circumstance of my being next in the entail of a Longbourn estate will be kindly overlooked on your side, and not lead you to reject the offer of olive branch. I cannot be otherwise than concerned at being the mean of injuring your amiable daughters, and beg leave to apologize for it, as well as to assure you of my readiness to make them every possible amends. But of this hereafter, if you should have no objection to receive me in your house, I propose myself the satisfaction of waiting on you and your family, Monday, November 18th, by 4 o'clock, and shall probably trespass on your hospitality till the Saturday se'nnight following, which I can do without any inconvenience, as Lady Catherine is far from objecting to my occasional absence on a Sunday, provided that some other clergyman is engaged to do the duty of the day. I remain, dear sir, with respectful compliments to your lady and daughters, your well-wisher and friend, William Collins. At 4 o'clock, therefore, we might expect this peacemaking gentleman, said Mr. Bennet, as he folded up the letter. He seems to be a most conscientious and polite young man, upon my word, and I doubt will prove a valuable acquaintance, especially if the Lady Catherine should be so indulgent as to let him come to us again. There's some sense in what he says about the girls, however, and if it is disposed to make them any amends, I shall not be the person to discourage him. Though it is difficult, said Jane, to guess in what way he can mean to make us atonement, he thinks our doom, the which is certainly to his credit. Elizabeth was cheerfully struck with his extraordinary deference for Lady Catherine, and his kind intention of christening, marrying, and burying his parishioners whenever they were required. He must be an oddity, I think, said she. I cannot make him out. There is something very pompous in his style, and what can he mean by apologizing for being next in the tail? We cannot suppose that he would help it. If it could, can he be a sensible man, sir? No, my dear, I think not. I have a great hopes of finding him quite reserved. There's a mixture of servility and a self-importance in this letter, which promises well. I am impatient to see him. In a point of composition, said Mary, his letter doesn't seem defective. The idea of the olive branch perhaps is not wholly new, yet I think it is very expressed. To Catherine and Lydia. Neither the letter nor its writer were in any degree interesting. It was next to impossible that their cousin should come in a scarlet coat, and if it was now some weeks since they have received pleasure from the society of a man in any other color, as for their mother, Mrs. Collins' letter had done away much of her ill will, and she was preparing to see him with a degree of composure which astonished her husband and daughters. Mr. Collins was punctual to his time, and was received with a great politeness by the whole family. Mr. Bennet, indeed, said little, but the ladies were ready enough to talk, and Mr. Collins sent neither in a way of encouragement nor inclined to be silent himself. He was a tall, heavy-looking young man of 25. His air was grave and stately, and his manners were very formal. He hadn't been seated before he complimented Mr. Bennet on having so fine a family of daughters. Said he had heard much of their beauty, but that in this instance family had fallen short of the truth, and added that he didn't doubt her seeing them in due time well disposed of in marriage. This gallantry was not much to the taste of some of his hearers, but Mr. Bennet, who inquired with no compliments, answered the most readily. You are very kind, sir, I'm sure, and I wish with all my heart it may prove so. For else they will be destitute in love. Things are settled so orderly. You allude perhaps to the entail of the estate. Ah, sir, I do indeed. It is a grievous affair to my poor girl. You must confess. Not that I mean to find fault with you, for such things I know are all chance in the world. There's no knowing how estates will go when once that come to be entailed. am a very sensible madam of the hardship to the fair cousins, and would say much on the subject, but that I am cautious of appearing forward and precipitated. But I can assure the young ladies that I come prepared to marry them. At present, I will not say any more, but perhaps when we are better acquainted. He was interrupted by the summons to dinner, and the girls smiled on each other. They were not the only subject of Mr. Collins's admiration. The hall, the dining room, and all its furniture were examined and appraised, and his commendation of everything would be touched in Mr. Bennet's heart, but for the mortifying supposition of his viewing and at all as his own future property, the dinner too, in its turn, was highly admired, and he begged to know to which of his fair cousins the excellence of his cookeries were owing. But here he was set right by Mrs. Bennet, who assured him with some asperity that they were very well able to keep a good cook, and that her daughters had nothing to do in the kitchen. He begged their pardon for having displeased her. In a softened tone, she declared herself not at all offended, but he continued to apologize for about a quarter of an hour. This leads up to the end of the show. Please drop a like, comment, subscribe to my channel. As always, I will see you guys tomorrow for Pride and Prejudice, the chapter 14th, newest updates. See you guys there. Stay tuned.